I thought swimming was a little bit backwards in terms of swimming has quite a big issue around people's body image, 100%. Which is slowly changing. I'll give it that. And like I've had issues with that in the past myself. And I came into cycling, I don't know whether, I just kind of expected it would be the same or maybe a bit worse. And it was kind of so much worse. Like all this focus on like body weight and so comparatively little focus on like being better.
Welcome back to the Talk It Out podcast. I'm Jen from UK Bike Fit. I'm a physio and bike fitter here, and today I'm here with Amber, who is an international swimmer, and we're going to have a chat about how Amber got into cycling and some of the things that women find challenging in the sport and some of the things that you enjoy about it. So do you want to give us a little intro and background about you, because you're, like I said, an international swimmer and you've done lots of really exciting things that people should know about.
Thank you. So I'm Amber, based in Sheffield. So my kind of main sport for most of my life so far was swimming. So I started out like most kids, just kind of, learning to swim for water safety aspects and so that I could be safe when on holiday or kind of in the sea. But I was a super competitive kid and also really uncoordinated on land. But thankfully a bit more coordinated in the water, and also just really determined and kind of loved the racing aspect. So quite quickly got into competitive swimming. And then kind of gradually worked my way up through the ranks of swimming competitions. So when I was 9 or 10, I made my first county championships. And then from there, I went up to regional, national, junior international level in 2013. Then hit a few speed bumps along the way, but made my first world championships in 2023 in the 10 kilometre open water swim. Again in 2024, made my second world championships, and was aiming to go to Paris last year. Didn't qualify, had one of those days on our qualification day, and instead decided to swim the channel for Surfers Against Sewage. It's been an amazing journey. If you told me when I was a kid that I would get to swim for my country and do the thing I loved while wearing a British hat, I wouldn't have believed you, frankly. And you also did a big swim in Hawaii and Australia? Yes. Yeah. So I had I'm sure we'll get onto it later, but I had a long period of my career from going to junior to senior where I hit a lot of challenges, and as such the last few years have really just taken every opportunity that comes my way. So once I realised I wasn't making Paris, I had a friend, Andy, who's based in Australia in Perth, and there's this kind of iconic channel swim out there called Rottnest, where you swim from Perth, which is Western Australia, and you swim out to this island called Rottnest Island, which is amazing. They have quackers, is normally what people know about. And Rottnest. How far is that swim? 19.7 kilometres. Right, which to the cyclists listening to this, they'll be like, yeah, that's like 45 minutes or whatever, but how swimming? Yeah, so it was actually a pretty wild day. So I didn't quite make it to the end, but I'll get on that in a moment. But we were in the water for 5.25 hours, swimming continuously, no stopping, not an easy pace either. It was a race, so I was really going hard, and the conditions were absolutely unbelievable. In the end, the race actually had to be aborted. I've seen some of the pictures. It was wild. Most of the people I know who are incredibly experienced ocean swimmers have never really seen anything like that. Just absolutely getting thrown around by waves, like thrown several meters to the side and back. We have safety support boats, and they had to pull the kayakers out of the water because it was too dangerous for the kayakers to be in the water because they were just going to get thrown onto swimmers. And in the end, for safety reasons, the whole event had to be called off. It's this amazing event where there's 20 elite competitors, I guess, and then there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are competing for themselves or even just kind of trying to make it across. It's this kind of real community event, which was really inspiring. So I was leading the race when I was at 17 kilometres out of the 19.7 kilometres. Wow, yeah. So although they couldn't, it's one of those weird ones. I don't think I can say I won Rottnest. We can say that you won. Okay, thanks. You can say that. I can't say that. And then more recently, you've kind of got into cycling. Yes. Yeah. So what's brought you into that, and what do you enjoy about cycling? What's kind of Yeah.
Are you targeting anything? What?
I love being on a bike.
Yeah.
So I first got into it back during COVID.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to train in a pool at the time.
Yeah.
And
People who don't know about Ponds Forge, that was like the worst pool to try and train in as well.
Oh,
when everything opened, Ponds Forge didn't open.
Yeah, there was a real danger that we were actually going to lose Ponds Forge, and that would have been a huge loss to the community. But the sports community, like the swimmers, the divers especially, the water polo players, and people in the local community really genuinely pulled together and saved that facility.
It was a nightmare to try and be a swimmer in Sheffield.
Yeah. And I got absolutely no support from any of my governing bodies to try and keep me in the water. So yeah, I picked up a bike instead. So I got this old second-hand bike for like £250, and one of my best friends and my partner at the time helped me to do it up to be kind of functional road bike. And I loved it. I trained.
And is that the bike that you came in on?
It is the bike I came in on to see you for a bike fit last week. Every part other than the frame is changed. But yeah, so I loved that you could stay out for so long on a bike. I love that you could be out for hours and hours with much less intensity than it would take to run.
That's exactly what I loved, that you can go out for so long, you can see so much stuff, so you can see like more stuff than you can see in a car, right? But when you're running, you can't get anywhere near as far as you can.
No.
And also you can't go running for 4 hours and then go out and run for 4 hours again the next day, but on the bike you can just keep going.
And it's so social as well, and I love that. Like running, for me anyway, is much more intense, and I struggle more to hold a conversation when I'm running than I do cycling. And I just love that kind of like cycling side by side, having a chat with your mates, seeing like beautiful countryside. And we're so lucky in the Peak District as well to have like all this on our doorstep. And I loved it. And I knew that I didn't want to kind of continue cycling too much whilst I was swimming because of the injury risk, but I knew that the second I kind of started to take a step back from training 20 hours a week, that cycling was what I wanted to pick up. So towards the end of last year, after I did the English Channel and the swim in Maui, I knew that cycling was going to be coming into the picture. So I'm still in the water, but I'm also spending a lot more time on the bike now, probably cycling more than anything else. And I just love it. It's great. That feeling of like the wind in your face, the sun on your back, like just being out in nature with nothing but you and your two little legs. But being able to go from your door in a way that you can't as easily when you run. And like you say, you can see so much stuff.
It's amazing. It's cool. And so you came in for a bike fit with me last week.
I did.
Which was fun.
Yes, it was fun.
What brought you in for that? What kind of... just if you can have a little talk about the kind of things that you found that you had maybe found uncomfortable on the bike, or things that you think are specific to women, or anything about what brought you in to come and see us.
Yeah, definitely. So when I picked up my bike, I hadn't even considered buying a women's bike. It was the second-hand bike COVID market. And there really wasn't women's available, and I was like, I'm tall, I'll be fine on a men's bike. So I just picked up basically the first one I found that I was like, this vaguely fits me, and actually ended up having to change an awful lot, which was a surprise to me.
To be fair, when you came in, your bike fit was not terrible. You'd done a good job with the changes that you made.
A lot had been done to that bike. So I had to buy new handlebars because, I literally couldn't reach that. I'm quite tall, and I couldn't properly reach my brakes to the point where I was like scared to go down hills on this bike. And I was really struggling to like reach the shifters and things like that. So I ended up buying an adjusting handlebars. I ended up buying...
You got a shorter stem as well.
Shorter stem. Bought like 4 new saddles. Which is probably going to change again, but I'm sure we'll come on to that later. And a lot of like kind of saddle adjustment up, down, forwards and back. But even so, I'd never managed to get completely comfy. And like with a background as a swimmer, I'm just used to being in pain all the time when I do exercise.
Exactly.
So I was like, I'll just suck it up, it's fine.
So that's exactly when I very first started cycling. So like when I transitioned from being a swimmer to being a triathlete. When I very first started cycling, I was like, well, this just can't, like, no one's meant to be comfortable. A saddle, like something that looks like this cannot be comfortable. But was totally wrong. You can actually be comfortable on a bike and not have really horrendous pain when you sit in a saddle. Have you been having pain in the saddle, or?
Yeah, so I had, especially when I first started cycling. let's just say it was COVID and I was having to sit at a desk after my long bike rides, and there was a reasonable amount of lying on a sofa and working from my laptop instead because I was struggling so much with like post-ride pain. And also I'm aware that like as a former like elite swimmer, like my brain's not normal. And I'm aware
push
that
yourself hard.
I'm willing to push myself to detriment to do sport, and normal people don't do that, and nor should they. So I guess I kind of,
but I think like lots of people we see in here, especially women, they just think, well, I shouldn't be comfortable in a saddle, and it's a complete myth. Like there is a saddle that's comfortable for you, even if you have the right saddle, if it's not in the right place. So we like moved your saddle around as well as testing different saddles as well. And did you find like the pressure map stuff? That's what we did with you.
Oh, that was amazing.
Helpful?
So that was, I guess they're the two main reasons I like came to you in the first place. Was number one, I wanted to talk to a woman about this, because every man who had tried to fix my saddle problems had helped a bit, but never really, I didn't feel quite grasped or understood. And I think that's kind of fair enough to an extent as well. I've also kind of known you for quite a while and always had amazing bike advice from you. So I was like, I know I'm in good hands. Your kit recommendations had already improved my comfort significantly. So I was like, Jen knows what she's talking about. The other side was like the saddle, specifically the saddle mapping was a main reason I wanted to come for a bike fit, and kind of already has made a significant difference. It's amazing just seeing the colour of the saddle map change and being like, wow, I wasn't just making it up or thinking that I was uncomfortable. Like, this image shows me that my saddle was awful. But also that there's, I can imagine, but also that there's better alternatives out there, and being able to see that instantly. And I've borrowed a saddle off you since, and it's been amazing the difference it's made, even like with a ride or two. And I want to do longer cycles. I want to hopefully race a little bit in the coming years, and to know that I can do that without being in pain for days afterwards is
because you want to do some longer rides and things,
definitely,
some bike packing and stuff.
For sure. And like that was always my biggest like limitation. It wasn't my fitness, it wasn't my legs, it was like my comfort sitting on the bike. And it's such a simple thing, and like so worth investing in, and I kind of wish I had done so sooner.
And I just think so many people think that they have to be uncomfortable, and they don't. And women especially, our anatomy is completely different to men, and we do get lots of women in here, and it's really nice. Like, I really enjoy helping women and people feeling comfortable enough to like talk to me about it, and know that also like I've sat on a saddle and been really uncomfortable as well. And like there was a time where I bought like I think about 10 saddles off Wiggle, and this was long before I was a bike fitter, and before I like had any kind of bike sponsorship or anything, and was just tried out all these saddles on the turbo, and then like sent 9 of them back, and it was hideous. But you don't have to be like that. So it's definitely made a difference to my comfort and enjoyment as well, because like at the end of the day, that's why the vast majority of us are on a bike, right? Because we like doing it. So why not we would not want to be more comfortable and in less pain. So tying on from your experience with a bike fit, should we have a talk about your experience from fueling? Because I guess that's quite different in cycling, and you're wanting to do these like long multi-day events from being like a pool swimmer. I mean, I guess you fueled differently when you were doing like the marathon swims and stuff, but how have you found that? And do you feel like as a woman there's anything that is a barrier or that you've come across that you find different in cycling in comparison to swimming? Yeah, definitely. Actually, that's been something I think I'm really lucky to have, is like my background of like being fortunate enough to be able to work with nutritionists over the past 5 years or so, specific to my swimming, but like a lot of that translates. I'm sure you found the same coming from triathlon into cycling and things as well. But yeah, fueling was really fascinating for me almost. So from big differences between pool swimming and cycling like I am now, but actually between open water swims and cycling that I'm doing now, there's not, I guess,
a lot of the fueling side of things is translated really well.
Yeah.
So 10K is like 2 hours long, but my kind of longer swims, so like Rottnest, Strait of Gibraltar, English Channel, they were kind of between around 5 to 9 hours, which is quite a long time.
That's a really long time to be swimming for. But I've cycled for that long. I literally can't imagine swimming for that long.
Yeah. Went to some interesting places in the mine.
Yeah.
But fueling wise, it actually kind of ties in quite closely. Yeah. Because it's that prolonged period of exercise, and like a lot of my mates I'd go out cycling with, I'd be there with like my gels every 20 minutes and they wouldn't be. And for me that was really shocking, because I was like, do you know how much energy you're using? Like, you need to get it into you, like, and completely understandably to other people that almost wasn't what they were thinking about, because most people I kind of started riding with, especially in the last couple of years, they don't have like a semi-pro athlete background. They're people who love the sport and have just kind of got into it.
I was going to say, I guess also because we both come from a performance background, you were wanting to fuel for that session so you could get the most out of that session, so you can get that performance, and also like you would be fueling during that session, but also because you probably had another session later, like you and I would both do like 2-3 sessions a day.
How fast can you recover?
You can't recover if you're then trying to eat. But I guess people who are just aren't coming from that like professional athlete background don't have that sort of one knowledge, but two, like, you know, they're just fueling to get to the end of the ride, not to improve their performance. But at the same time,
isn't it?
You're not going to enjoy your ride if you're bonking all the time.
Yeah, and not just like enjoying your ride as well, but like how many people do you know who like will be going on long bike rides and be like, oh, but I can't do it midweek because I'll be too tired for work, but I'd really like to. And it's like, well, sometimes maybe that's just not feasible for people alongside busy life, whether it's work or studying or like kids or friends or whatever. But actually a lot of the time, fueling better during your ride, it's not about your ride, it's about fueling better during your ride so that you're not exhausted for the rest of the day and you're not hurting the day after and the day after and the day after. And that's something I feel really lucky to have learned through swimming, that I've then brought into my own cycling. And kind of, I think in particular for women in cycling, there's almost this like, oh, I don't want to take on extra carbs when I'm doing my activity, because there's this whole thing around like most women feel like they are exercising to lose weight, even subconsciously, even if they wouldn't outwardly
I think with cycling as well, I was going to say, do you think, because there's so much focus on cycling, which I find wild coming from triathlon, there's so much focus on like your weight, and that if you're lighter, you'll be better, and people forget about like your power to weight ratio is the thing that matters. And people are like, well, if I lose weight, I'll go up the hill faster, I can't put on weight. And there's so much stuff around like weight. Well, no, if you're strong, and to be strong, you need muscle, and muscle weighs.
Yes.
But do you think that is another sort of cycling?
1,000,000%. I could harp on about that all day, but I will keep my rant to a minimum. But like, that was definitely something that surprised me, because I thought swimming was a little bit backwards in terms of swimming has quite a big issue around people's body image, 100%. Which is slowly changing. I'll give it that. And like, I've had issues with that in the past myself. And I came into cycling, I don't know whether I just kind of expected it would be the same or maybe a bit worse. And it was kind of so much worse. Like, all this focus on like body weight and so comparatively little focus on like being better. And whether, like you say, power to weight is the aim, right? Not just your weight. Losing weight doesn't necessarily ever make you faster. It's like everybody has their own optimum weight, and we've kind of been led to believe that it's like stick skinny is the optimum, and like, for most people it's really not. Especially like, what is your optimum? Is your optimum to be a professional cyclist? Is your optimum to live a happy life and be able to enjoy your bike rides? Like, it's probably not to lose as much weight as humanly possible, like but for that reason, most people I think feel like, oh well, I'm almost doing a better job if I don't fuel on my cycles, and it's just, and then
you just won't recover, and you'll just be really tired for the rest of the day, and also probably not enjoy, like, if you're going out for a 4-hour ride and you don't eat anything until like maybe you get to 3 hours and you think, oh, I'll just have this cereal bar because I feel a bit rubbish. That last hour is going to be hell. If you live in Sheffield and you've got a hill to climb up at the peak,
the last hill on the way home is the worst of the ride. But it's kind of, it's like we all know the kind of the saying like, oh, if you drink when you're thirsty, it's too late. But it's the same when you're fueling during a ride, right? Like if you're getting hungry, you're too late. You've gone past it.
So you were saying earlier that like swimming has also had a bit of a problem with that, and that you at times felt like you needed to be smaller to be a faster swimmer and things like that. And how did you sort of deal with those issues?
Yeah, so that was a really tricky time for me. And I think I also hadn't realised quite how much like internalised thinner is better was like in my head, but it had been like my whole life when I looked back at it.
And you do like quite openly talk about this on your Instagram and things, don't you?
Yeah.
Not making you talk about anything you don't.
No, not at all. Very happy to. Yeah, so I talk about this stuff all the time, and it matters a lot to me. And like these open conversations like we're having now, they weren't around when I was a teenager.
Yeah, definitely.
They were not around. And it makes me feel really old to say that. And I'm glad that times are moving on.
It's only like really recent that England Swimming have banned coaches like weighing athletes that were
like literally, was it last year or the year before?
I think I think it was maybe so because I'm from the Isle of Man, wasn't ever part of like England Swimming, and you're just different in your own little nation, right? And I had no idea that, because I look back now and think, oh my God, I was so lucky to have a coach who he never put any, skinnier, because a lot of the time in swimming they'll say, well, the smaller you are, the more streamlined you'll be.
Yeah,
so
similar to cycling, right? Get up the hills faster if you're skinnier.
And he never ever put that pressure on us, and he never ever weighed us or asked us what our weight was. But it's wild that used to happen.
Yeah.
And do you find people like coming to you now? Is there any like support for people out there that are struggling with things like that?
Yeah, so I struggled an awful lot, and when I was at uni, the combination of like trying to be a better athlete, stressed with uni, I got injured and wasn't able to do my sport, and that like really knocked my self-identity. And I ended up going so far down that spiral that I had quite a bad eating disorder, to the point where I managed to give myself bone stress injuries from literally walking around, which is really scary, to be honest. And it's not uncommon. And even there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily, doing it in quite as dark a hole as I was, but still doing their body's damage without realising it by underfueling. So at the time of kind of coming to terms with having an eating disorder, I looked around and there was just no one I could see that had found a way out. There was it's no
really
one that
difficult
was in the
if you're on that cusp of like, you're not a fully funded athlete, but you are competing in an elite section, so you don't have the free psychology access, but you're competing at the same level as the people who do have all of that free stuff. And therapy is very expensive. So you've set up an organisation called Athlete Interactions.
I have, yes.
Yeah.
So
do you want to tell us a bit about that? Because I think it's really cool what you've done.
Thank you. Yeah. So first off, we're not medical support, we are peer support. I always like to get that out there. I had professional support in getting better from my eating disorder, and it is out there, even if sometimes it is very challenging to access. But nothing will ever replace professional support if people need that. But sometimes people need something else, whether they're not actually kind of in need of professional support, but they still need someone to talk to, or maybe as well as professional support, they also just kind of want a friend to talk to.
Yeah, or someone who's been through a similar experience, someone who kind of gets it, they know what it's like to try and like be an athlete and be a woman and come
100%.
Against these.
Yeah. So we set up Athlete Interactions with the aim of raising awareness and, most importantly, taking action around mental health in sport, specifically for women, girls and non-binary athletes, because that's the experiences of the individuals who set the organisation up, but also because there's this huge dropout in sports of women and girls and other minoritized genders, and we can't solve all of the problems that contribute to that, but what we can do is take this one little piece, mental health, with which we have a lot of lived experience, and try and help others. So specifically, we set up a project called the Athlete Support Network. I set it up with Rachel Rogers, who is an ex-alpine skier, which is incredibly badass, and she's a very cool human. And together we set up the Athlete Support Network, which is a peer support system for women and girls aged 16 and above. And what we basically do is just give athletes or retired athletes someone to chat to who understands what they're going through.
Yeah.
So we've had people come to us with anything and everything from like, oh, I've moved to uni and I'm finding the transition of clubs difficult, through to I've been ill for a really long time or injured for a really long time and I'm struggling to get through it. We've had people come to us for like a one-off because they just need to make a big decision and they want an independent person to chat it with, through to kind of people who've been with us for like almost 6 months or even longer because they've had a really difficult thing in their life to work through and they just need that kind of, we describe ourselves, it's a bit cringy but it's true, like as a teammate that's outside of their immediate environment. So like we're on their side, we're there to help them, but you also don't have to kind of see us every day. And we really deliberately make sure that we pair our volunteers with athletes who they kind of, where possible, would never come across in their everyday life. So it really does keep it independent. And yeah, it's just someone to chat to, because I was lucky, I had people, but not everyone does, or maybe people do and they still don't want to go to their friends about things they might feel are embarrassing. But we wanted to make sure that everyone had a safe place to turn. And
I think it's an amazing organisation that you've set up. And so if there's anybody who like listens to this who might know somebody or thinks that they might want to get in touch, like how can they get in touch with Athlete Interactions?
Yeah, so we have a website which is athleteinteractions.org, but the place where we have our most updates is on our Instagram at Athlete Interactions, and yeah, I'm also at amber.keegan on Instagram and talk quite a bit specifically about the eating disorder side of things and body image side of things as well. But yeah, I've got an amazing team at Athlete Interactions, a real range of volunteers from different sports who are all just basically focused on trying to make the next generation's lives easier than ours was. A really inspiring, amazing bunch of humans. And we've got some exciting work that we're hopefully doing this year. We've got some, hopefully, events coming up very soon, both online and then in person if we can. And we're also looking at starting some research this year as well, which would be amazing. But yeah, it's, you know, people like you and like my volunteers who are really making the world a better place for the women in sport that are here and will come after us. And yeah, I think sport's a really inspiring place to be for that reason.
Oh, amazing. Well, yeah, I think that's just like such a fantastic thing that you've done. And yeah, I think that kind of rounds up everything that we're going to chat about. So thank you so much for being on. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this and want to hear more of our future episodes from Talk It Out, brought to you by UK Bike Fit.